Today I'm going to take you through how I maintain my skills when I'm traveling. So at the moment I'm in the UK. I've traveled over from Australia. I'm here for 3 weeks. I'm seeing family because I'm originally from the UK, but I'm also teaching workshops while I'm here. Now, the cool thing with handstands and calisthenics means that we can train anywhere. It's a lot more adaptable than having something we need to go to. Now, I'm here for 3 weeks, so I've had to work out the best way to maintain and juggle my training when I'm here. I was here for 2 or 3 days, and then I went straight into my first workshop. Now, for the workshops, I'm doing 2 seminars. So I'm doing one in the morning that's 2 hours long, where I cover the basic handstand movements, the balance, the mobility, and that side of thing. And then I have an hour break, and then I do another session in the afternoon, which is another 2 hours long, which is all the skills, the handstand push-ups, the presses, and the bodyweight strength movements. So physically, they're quite full on for me. There's 4 hours of demonstrating movements, going through questions, and basically performing at the highest level I can in terms of demonstrating perfect forms and things like that. So in terms of that itself, that's a hard training session. And the following couple of days, I don't really do any training because I'm pretty sore from doing those. Then I've had a week's gap and I'm now about to go into my next workshops, which is exactly the same thing, just on a different weekend in a different location. Now, I've still been filming my daily content for my social media, so that's around a 10 to 30 minute session, and I do that daily, and it's something to do with a press or something to do with a handstand push-up. They're not normally that taxing, but obviously I'm warming up and I'm on my hands and I'm doing some sort of training there. And then as a full training session in between the workshops, I've done this training session. I recommend that you do something similar when you're away and you haven't done your full training, and it's just a good way of checking in on everything. So now I'm going to take you through what I've done in the gym yesterday. You can use this as a bit of a follow along for when you're traveling, or if you just want a full body session and check in on the main areas. So first of all, it's flexibility. We need to check that we have nice open positions, and what I was doing is I was making sure that I could open up these areas to where my general range is when I'm training. I potentially could be a little bit tighter from all the traveling and the lack of training and the lack of movement, so I might need to spend a little bit more time here just to make sure that I'm open up as much as I normally am. So first of all, I went on the foam roller and I've done some thoracic extension, just rolling back and forwards and making sure that I was nice and open through there. I then targeted each segment of the spine individually for the thoracic, so going from the bottom rib up to the top rib, and then rolled over the area again. I then jumped up on the bar for a 60-second hang, so hands shoulder width apart, just relaxing as much as I can. This is a fantastic one to do when you're away. It's nice and quick, nice and easy. You just got to find somewhere that you can hang. Then I use the bench to get into the quads and hip flexors. So here I'm targeting the hip flexors a little bit more, so I'm a little bit more open in the lunge and I'm pushing the hip forwards. You could do this one up against the wall and get more into the quads, or you could open it up even more, even have the back foot down, pushing the hip forwards into that deeper lunge position. You could arch backwards, whatever variation you have, just to really get into those quads and hip flexors. Here I'm doing about 30 seconds on each side. That was enough for me to feel like I'm into my open position. Obviously, change the times depending on how tight you are and how much your body opens up and how it responds to stretching. Next, I targeted both hamstrings at the same time using the Jefferson curl. Now, this is great because it gets your hamstrings, your calves, and your spine. You're getting the articulation on the way down, and then you're getting the lengthening of the spine, the low back, the hamstrings, and the calves at the bottom. Now, if you are particularly tight in the hamstrings, I wouldn't pick this one. I would isolate each hamstring individually to really isolate the hamstrings and not overuse the spine. So obviously you need to determine which hamstring stretch is best for you and how tight you are. If you do have a bit more flexibility, the Jefferson curl is a fantastic one because the big bang one, you're getting lots of things at once. And I do around 3 to 5 repetitions, depending on the speed you go and how much you're articulating the spine and how much your range of motion is. Here I'm winding it up quite a bit with a 20 kilo bar. Obviously don't start with a 20 kilo bar if you're new to the exercise. Use a stick or something light to start with. Then pitch and stretch. My glutes are really tight, especially when I haven't done any movements for a while. And I really love this variation, especially up on the bench, because my back hip flexor, my back leg doesn't get in the way, and I can sink the hip really nice and low, and I can adjust the torso position to feel that stretch in the glutes. Again, around 30 to 45 seconds on each side. Then I done my normal wrist prep for handstands, so fingers to the side, shoulders on top of the hands, doing some circles. Then going into wrist peel, so peeling up through the knuckles, through the fingers, through the palms. Now, because I have still been doing handstands every day, I didn't need too much for a wrist prep, and these felt pretty good pretty quickly. Into my standard shoulder stretch, just making sure the toes on the floor, the hips on top of the knees, a strong posterior tilt so I'm not arching through the low back, up onto fingertips, keep looking at the fingertips as you take the chest towards the floor, and then a good morning of some sort. So today I picked a standing version. You could do a seated version. The standard version is really nice and you can really focus on a full opening of the hip at the top of the movement, and then you can play around with the distance or the depth you're moving and how much you go towards that split. Just make sure if you are going into quite a bit of a split that you fully open the hip at the top of the movement. And then into some handstand balance or handstand conditioning for the line. Now again, because I'm on my hands all the time, I just want to do a check-in. So I just done a freestanding handstand, a chest to wall handstand for demonstration purposes, and then I just done a few one-arm handstands. Now my one-arm handstand feels okay. I just want to make sure that I can demonstrate a good quality one-arm handstand on the right-hand side, and then my left, because that's my weaker side, I just do a couple of conditioning holds on fingertip just to maintain the current level. But you could go into heel pulls or toe pulls or a little bit other balance work, but I would definitely make sure that you've got your conditioning there. So whether that's a 60-second chest to wall or a 60-second freestanding or even a back line or a front line drill. Then into the strength skills. So I went between handstand push-ups and presses and then a bit of ring strength. So these are the movements that I'll be demonstrating in the workshops. So I want to make sure that I had all the elements and I just run through the progressions of the handstand push-up press, starting with eccentrics. So I went through the pike push-up on the floor, then the same but with the foot raise. So I've got one foot up in the air. You could just have both feet on the box. You don't have to extend one foot. One foot extending makes it loaded a little bit more into the arms and the shoulders. But I'm still making that same triangle when I touch the floor and opening the shoulders back up again. Then it's up onto the wall, doing the standard eccentric with chest to wall. So trying to keep that one segment from shoulder to toes and then slowly coming down to that triangle position at the bottom. Same but freestanding, so really working on quality of line here from shoulder to feet, and again making that triangle position between the hands and the head, showing control at the bottom of the movements as well. You'll find with these ones that coming out of the position when you get at the bottom, especially when you're chest to wall, it's really tricky to get out of the position. So having an escape route is important if you're going to do repetitions of these. Then up on the box for a deficit, eccentric handstand push-up, and just practicing that shoulder stand at the bottom. The shoulder stand position makes it much easier to exit the position. These can be done chest to wall as well, obviously with toes against the wall. Once I'd done all the eccentrics, I then repeated exactly the same process again, because that was my warm-up for the concentrics. So concentric pike push-up, then the same but with the foot elevated, one foot up in the air. Again, exactly the same, just the eccentric plus the concentric. The chest to wall handstand push-up, making sure that you go down to that bottom position, but you're also returning back through exactly the same pathway and opening the shoulders fully at the top. And now you can see it with the freestanding handstand push-up where I go through that same pathway, shoulder to feet stand one segment, head touches and then going all the way back up and then opening the shoulder back to that start position at the top. The same on the box, just a bigger range of motion, going all the way to collarbone to box, going all the way back up to a controlled handstand at the top. Same idea with the press handstand. So we start on that eccentric, taking the shoulders and all of the back to the wall, rolling down the wall segment by segment until the toes touch the floor. Now watch here that I'm doing a hold at the bottom. Now this is really, really important. If you miss this hold at the bottom, I would do it separately. So if you fall out of the position, I do a separate hold at the bottom and make sure you get some time under tension, right on tiptoes, no weight in the toes, get all the way into that upper back position. Same thing freestanding, controlled pathway all the way down, hold at the bottom. And then for the stool to press, I'm doing it elevated on the box, but still having a pause, but now the pause is in the straddle L sit. Background again with the eccentric, just make sure with this one that you turn the hands out a little bit if you're doing this wall one. You don't want to make it too hard on the wrists, and you might have to play with the distance your hands are away from the wall. And then the eccentric back down again, show control all the way to the floor. Same thing freestanding. And then the same thing for the stool to press, just obviously the bigger range of motion coming from that straddle L-sit position at the bottom and all the way back up again. Now into the ring strength. Now I was a bit naughty here. I went straight into this with no false grip warm up. Obviously as a coach, I'd recommend to you that you should do a false grip warm up. I didn't, but I sort of know I can get away with it. So I started again with the eccentrics. So doing the eccentric using the bench, coming down the pathway from that top support position, slowly coming through the transition and coming all the way down to the floor. Now the bench is set up nicely here so I can get all the way down to straight arms, but I'm getting a slight toe assist off the bench. Remember, minimum toe assist, and we really want the pathway to look identical as the real thing when we're not having that toe assist. So here's one without the bench, and hopefully if you put them side by side they would look identical if we was only looking at the upper body. Then same again but going through the concentric, so with the toe assist starting in that bottom position fully open and then all the way up to the top, and then comparing it again to the real thing. Again, they'll look more or less identical. Because of the height of the rings on here, I'm not in a full hang position, So that would change it very slightly if I was on higher rings. Then L-sit to shoulder stand. So first on the P-bars. Now this could be done as shoulder stand to L-sit, or if you have it L-sit to shoulder stand, you could stay in a tuck. You could open up into straighter positions. You could use a wall assist or have a spotter. Obviously just make sure you're not going to back splat on that shoulder stand position. And then taking exactly the same skill but putting it up on the rings, which is quite a jump up in terms of skill level. Then into the straight arm strength on the rings. So I'm doing assisted skin the cat, or I'm using a jump or bent arms to go through the movement. First of all into the German hang, having a little bit of a kick off the floor to come back out. But when I come back out, I'm trying to come out with straight arms. And then the full tuck version, so standing in a tight tuck but straight arms all the way through on the eccentric and the concentric. And then I put it all together into a ring routine. So starting in a front lever, going to a muscle up, L-sit to shoulder stand. Forward roll. Going through to a back lever. And then pulling back out with straight arms. Now for me that worked as a great session because that's majority of the movements that I'll be demonstrating in some way and I'll be covering in my workshops. They're also the main skills that I like working on when I train. So just maintaining them or checking in that I have that ability to do them is really good mentally before I go teach a workshop, but is also really good from a check-in skill maintenance point of view. Let me know how you handle your training when you're on holiday. Let me know if you have any questions regarding this. If you're interested in coaching or coming to any of my future workshops, www.paultwyman.com.au for information. And I'll speak to you next time. Thanks, guys.